Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Dedicated to the Craft, a podcast brought to you by Ballast Point Brewing Company. I'm your host, Jeff Lozano, and today we're talking everything beer pairing. It's a big topic with a lot to talk about, but we're going to touch on a few components. We're bringing on Colby Chandler from Ballast Point, and we're also bringing on Edwin Real from Eating and Drinking in San Diego. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's crack open a beer and let's get this started. All right, guys, and with that, I'm going to bring in the infamous, the one and only Colby Chandler from Ballast Point. What is up, my dude?
Hola. What's
Hola,
up,
senor. Good to see you, man. How are you?
Oh, just chilling in my garage, you know.
Really? You're still home, huh? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. How's that been?
I was free today, so thanks for giving me something to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Any excuse to drink, to hide out in your man cave and drink some beer. Why not?
Oh, that doesn't take a whole lot to do that.
What's up? What do you got here? An old buddy, Colby? You might know.
Yeah.
This
Good.
little dude.
Good.
Let's go ahead and crack this open.
I'm drinking some Abnormal.
Abnormal. Nice.
Yeah,
What are you sipping on?
They're blonde. A little bit of blonde ale.
Easy drinking.
Like cream ale. Easy drinking. Nice and soft. Goes good with mezcal.
You know, I think cats got off to a really aggressive head start when this quarantine started, and they loaded up on some heavy hitters like, dude, we're staying in. We're not driving anywhere. And then you're starting to see everybody kind of pouring into the to-go stations and be like, okay, give me something light, give me something crisp. I want to be able to start drinking at 11 and just kind of
it's a marathon. It's a marathon.
Coherent. Yeah. I'm very much
for the vices throughout the day. There has to be
right.
Yeah,
a gradual buildup. Listen, man, you're the dude. You are an OG. You can tell by the backdrop there. You got every single sign that we've probably ever produced. You got a cool little man cave there, sir. What else do you got in there?
I got a kegerator with a few taps on it. Tools, lots of toys. Video games, TV, you know, kind of a place to come out and just chill.
Yeah. Well, look,
eventually a little one barrel. I got a little one barrel system I got to set up.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude! You're gonna open up a little satellite? Is that what you're doing? Is that your plan to? You're prepared for Armageddon. Like if things were really going down, I hope you have a shotgun in there too, because people are going to be knocking.
I'm dealing with this pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Listen, dude, this is an exciting episode for us. You are the king of Ballast Point beer dinners. You have, more than 500 under your belt?
Close to 6 now at this point.
Yeah, you've been doing this since when?
July of 97. Yeah.
And every time that we chat, every time I talk to you, you are just full of insight, and you really change people's way of looking at food through beer goggles, which is cool because you have a lot of people doing that for wine, and you have a lot of people doing that for cocktails, especially in these high-end places where they have, you know, the best chefs, but there's not many people doing it for beer. You're on a short list of dudes that are really good at it, that can make beer really exciting when it comes to food. So what before we get into more of the details, do you have a pairing or a dinner before we bring Edwin on that really just stands out for you?
We did one at Torrey Pines years ago where we actually paired all the pepper beers up with food. So normally, you know, people talk about the 3 C's of tasting. You know, you have cleanse, contrast, complement, but I always like to throw in a fourth one, which is condiment. So that dinner was kind of like a condiment dinner where, you know, you took a poached trout and basically with a really nice cucumber sauce on top of it, really fresh, bright flavors. And then we paired it up with our yellowtail pale ale with serranos, the roasted serranos in it.
Oh, so good.
So it was just kind of a nice, back and forth with a little bit of cucumber and everything. So we kind of went through the whole meal with guajillo calico and the Thai chili wahoo and what else? The black marlin with cocoa nibs and orange peel and
that one had chipotle, didn't it?
Chipotle in it as well. And then I got to go on the Sierra Nevada beer bus. We went and we had a huge pairing dinner in New York where everybody got a course basically that was part of the bus and part of the 12-pack. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Flew in for that. Cool. There was a bunch of cool stories and yeah, it was a pretty fun night.
Well, it's when you start paying attention. I think that's the real problem. A lot of people go, I can't pair. I don't have the palate for it. Oh, I can't smell anything. It all tastes the same to me. In the beginning, you would have gotten away with that in my world. But now, because I've done a few beer dinners myself, you go, no, you're just not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. You're doing this thing where you're scarfing it down in a good old American fashion, and you're just washing it down with beer. And you hear it. Even people say it that way. Like, I'm going to wash it down with this, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to see how this works and how this plays with each other. So you
can break it down to sodas if you want. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be beer. It could be anything that you're drinking. Juices, sodas. What's the best soda for what I'm eating at the moment,
RC Cola, bro, all day.
RC
Cola.
Always
wins. It always wins. Hey, listen, this is a conversation and a topic that can go hours and hours, but let's bring on someone that knows a thing or two about what we're going to be talking about. Let's bring on Edwin Real.
What's up, guys?
Yo, dude, what's up, man?
How are you?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. You and Colby are reunited.
Yeah. When I did my first podcast, it had to be a legend, because it had to set the tone. And so I did a podcast for Pacific Magazine for 18 episodes for on the drinking side. And my first guest, it was the only two-banger because we went so long that we had to break it up into 2 episodes. It was with Colby Chandler, my hero. How are you, Colby?
I'm wonderful. That was a good time.
It was
we
too
were
short
having food on air too.
Yeah, right? We did. You brought food and beer that time.
Back when you guys could hang out, right?
I tend to do that.
We're just for everyone listening on Spotify or listening on Apple, we are tuning into each other virtually. We are adhering to these suggestions about social distancing. So we're going to do this virtual. I got to be honest with you guys. I've been hanging out with a lot of guys virtually, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So virtual cheers. How about that?
Yeah. Boom.
Ooh, there you
Look,
go,
I got a
Edwin.
class too.
You're official. Yeah. You're on. All right.
Logos forward.
You're part of you're part of the team. Hey, listen, Edwin. So we had an awesome conversation earlier before the show, and it was my first time meeting you. I had listened to you on the podcast, a few of them, and I've read a few interviews, and you got it, man. You got this philosophy that is bringing everybody in this culinary world and beer world and cocktail world and wine world, you name it, together. And you're on a mission, and we're going to get down to the nitty gritty about what you're trying to achieve with what you've built. But before you start your story, I wanted to ask you, why do you think that beer and food, from a pairing perspective, is even worth talking about?
Well, in San Diego, more than any place else in America. Oh, hold on.
Oh, who's that dude?
This is Chuck. He's all excited.
He's getting his meal in.
Yeah. I know he's having a pairing. It looks like.
Well, like I was saying, like in San Diego, we have this distinct advantage of having this many breweries, right? But more so, we have that many great breweries, much like Napa in the 70s. Here we are in San Diego in the golden era of San Diego beer, and because we have so much, this is what we know best. These are a lot of the chefs that we work with, a lot of the, no brewers, they have a good relationship. They give each other beer to cook with. And so what we're seeing here in San Diego is a bunch of people who know how to work beer, even if they're not brewers like you guys, right? But they know, because they have had so much access and like access to great beer, they know how to use it. They know how to pair with it. They know how to cook with it. And so that's why it's important for San Diego to embrace this whole concept of beer dinners, beer pairings, and cooking with beer. And
Right.
I'm glad you guys are doing it at Ballast Point, and Colby, pioneer at this. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago you guys did a great dinner at well, it was a brunch at Tornado, and it was all, all the heavy hitters of San Diego food, like Nick Brune and one of my favorite beer chefs, Tyson Blake of O'Brien's.
Oh yeah, that
So,
guy's an animal.
and it was literally like maybe 4 or 5 years to the day.
That was the first brunch that Tornado did, was Ballast
Yeah.
Point.
No
Wow.
way. That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude. They did a lot for this town. They definitely left a footprint, right? They left a good impression on everybody. They helped bring people into craft beer, and then while everybody was in that arena, they converted them into aficionados and beer pairers and stuff. You didn't walk out of Tornado thinking about beer the same way, which is something that was very beneficial to the city, and it's in part why we think about beer the way that we do. So
Can I add something to Edwin's comment too?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget how agricultural driven beer is, and how agricultural driven restaurants are, and wine is. So I think it's also just a natural fit that, we just get along so well together, because, we rely on the same ground in a lot of places.
Well, Colby, to add to that, Diego has the most small organic farms of any county in America. And so when we have access to that, not to mention access to some of the best seafood in San Diego, and then you bring up from Mexico all this great flavors and spices and cooking techniques, why isn't San Diego this great place to bring all of it together? And I'm so glad we live in this moment, because we are experiencing something very special that other cities are now finding out about in the last 5 or 6. That's There are great ways to pair food and beer, and it should not be frowned or looked down upon by wine snobs, even though it'll always be.
Well, Edwin, you've made it your life's mission. You believe in that so full-heartedly that you've made it your life's mission. I mean, you started eating and drinking in San Diego, and I want to let you talk about what that means to you and what that means to San Diego itself. What got you into food? What got you into drinks, beverages? When you came from an IT background?
Okay, so I would say it was 2000. It was Bastille Day 2014, or 2004, when my mom called me and says, "Hey, do you want to buy this bakery? It's a French bakery in Otay Ranch. The guy doesn't want to do it anymore." And being a francophone, I saw the date. It was July 14th, which is Bastille Day, and I thought it was a great sign. And so I bought this bakery. I learned how to bake, and that's how I got into the food industry. I wanted to know everything about it, from how to unplug an ice machine to from dishing to all the way up to baking and doing, uh, you know, uh, uh, wholesale for one of the best restaurants in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's how I got into food. But it was, again, like you guys, you're very technical, and baking is a technical aspect of cooking. It's the most technical, I think, in the culinary arts. And so for me, coming from an IT background, going into another very technical field, it was just a natural fit. And so I did that, and I ended up meeting a lot of rad people in the food industry, and I knew right away that I knew insurance was not my people. It was a good way to make money, and it was a good way to use my brain, my technical brain. And it was an insurance. It was insurance IT is what I did, and but my people it was about community. It was about, seeing how all these people work, how they know each other, how they connect. And that's when I realized it was December 2014. I decided, I'm going to just hang out with all my friends and talk about food on this page that I created, which is EDSD, Eating and Drinking in San Diego. And that first month, there was 250 people there. Today, 5 years later, there's 15,800. And I
Oh man.
declined more than I admit into the group because like you guys, you understand as much as anyone that there's, it's important to have a culture. And EDSD, for all the good, bad, ugly, warts and all, has a culture.
Right. 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 And you're very
That's
tuned into that.
exactly how I was going to describe it. Was he's building a culture in San Diego basically around
Yeah.
all good things.
Yeah, and
Simple.
you know what? When you start talking about San Diego as a community, as opposed to a cool spot to live or an expensive spot to live or a cool place to visit, you're forced into the little nooks and crannies of what that culture means, or what we've built in the city. You guys have been in the trenches a lot longer than I have. So when we talk about putting San Diego on the map as far as a culinary city, for instance, which is what you're trying to do. What are the biggest challenges that you're presented with when you get on that journey about trying to let the world know what San Diego has to offer?
Well, we're kind of overlooked by two giants. We have Mexico to the south and LA to the north. And so we kind of can just create our own little entity here. Everyone says New York has the best pizza or that place has the best this. But you know what San Diego has? The ability to do whatever we want. And I think that goes through a lot of different ways in San Diego. A lot of the brewers, they do whatever they want, right? They put adjuncts in, or they do, something that might not necessarily sell, but they want to do it because I can do it, and they do little small batches. Well, we can do that same thing in San Diego food. And I think San Diego food did a smart thing a decade ago by seeing how important beer was to the culinary scene, that, we could really grow with this with this brewery world and which will elevate our
Yeah,
culinary world. And I think what people often overlook is this idea that, you know, um, like guys like you, like at Ballast Point, you have you have a reason to have a food component to your empire, right? Because you want people to eat and then drink. Well, that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted to do in Napa in the 70s,
hmm,
right? They wanted you to stick around so you can drink more wine, right? And so
yeah,
here we are in San Diego, and a decade later, we're seeing the fruits of that. Young kids coming up that were, 20 years old, and they were the prep cooks. They're now becoming a 30-year-old, 35-year-old,
yeah,
40-year-old cook, executive chef somewhere, making decisions, and they have beer on their palate. They know what it's like to cook with it, how to eat with it, and so we're experiencing this great. Evolution of food in San Diego because of beer. And just one last thing, like
oh, keep it going, brother.
I realized one of the smart things that I did as a business entity was to create something called Liquid City, because a lot of the people who are brewing now, they're doing other things. They're distilling, they're making coffees, they're making teas. So we are now truly a liquid city, not just a beer city. And it's fantastic to get,
Right.
the different checking off the different things of being liquid in San Diego.
So why don't you explain what Liquid City is?
So I did this podcast called uh, Kiss My Glass. It was for Pacific Magazine. And during the process, I wanted to talk to this guy. His name was Matt from Coaba, which is a coffee roaster out of Portland. He opened up a San Diego branch, and it was the first time he opened a coffee house in anywhere outside of Portland. And so I asked him, why did you come here to San Diego when you're a Portland company? You could have gone to LA, New York, wherever, right? You are successful. And he goes, well, I knew that I could come here and have people appreciate liquids. You might not be a world-class food city, but you are a world-class liquid city. And everything just like shifted in my head. It was a paradigm shift. And, when someone from the outside tells you that they come here because we can appreciate liquids, it tells you a lot about our reputation outside of our bubble, right? People perceive this of us. And so when it came time to sign up and create an LLC, we called it Liquid City San Diego because
Dope.
I think that's the direction we're going. Not that beer is going anywhere. It's a $1.5 billion industry in San Diego, and there's no way it's going to go anywhere. But there is room for people to appreciate all the different reasons why San Diego is a liquid city. We have Mike Arquinez over at Mostra winning Roaster of the Year. We have some of the best cocktail bars in America here in San Diego, some of the best beer bars, some great kombucha makers. So again, it's like really appreciating, and not to mention, old colleagues of yours creating Cutwater and making something very special out of that, and selling to whoever for however many millions. So we see a lot of like eyeballs on San Diego as being
Right.
a truly liquid city.
That begs the question, Colby, you've been in this game for a long time. Was it frustrating to you living in this gap where beer wasn't really being appreciated for what it could bring to the table?
We all evolved with it wasn't, man, I feel like we were evolving with the scene almost more than leading it in a lot of ways, because beer's been around for, thousands and thousands of years. We're not reinventing the wheel here. But kind of to Edwin's point, we had a clean slate. We were able to do beers, our homebrewing community, here in San Diego, and Homebrew Mart, and really kind of pushed the limits on what hops could do. And that kind of bled into the professional breweries a little bit more. It was hard in the beginning. You were up against the Mexican beers and Coors Light basically everywhere. So you had to make not only quality beer, but beer that had enough quality to be served at what were considered quality locations. That served quality liquor, quality wine, and other quality coffee, quality beverages. And to be frank, it took us a little while to get to that point. But by working all together and sharing ideas and techniques and recipes, we kind of all elevated each other there in the beginning. And for me, it was important. I came from a restaurant background, and I sold tons of wine and attended a lot of wine dinners. And I saw the potential of the beer and food. And I also saw the trust that customers have with chefs. And if I could get a chef to come in and be excited about our product, then that enthusiasm just bleeds into his customers, and then that just kind of continues, to trickle down basically. And eventually those customers come find us at the brewery, and they see, that we have basically a beer for everyone at Ballast Point. And they had no idea that Ballast Point was a homebrew shop, and the homebrewers had no idea that Homebrew Mart was Ballast Point, so all of that was just kind of foundational. It was 15 years of foundation, I think, in San Diego to build the building that we're a part of today.
Right. Well, that's a good point. One of the things that I always talk about is pairing beer with anything, but specifically food. It wrecks you in the best possible way. And I say this time and time again. It's like once you get to the point where you're figuring out your palate, it's like you uncovered this toolbox that you didn't know that you were carrying around, because no one's really paying attention to what they like. They're dependent on the sommelier. They're dependent on the waiter or the waitress to come in and say, hey, you know what I can recommend with that? And for the most part, we've all been in the industry. We know the industry, man. It's very much propelled by some sort of incentive. Some wine guy came in and wants you to sell that wine, and that's fine. And because of that, you get this kind of rudimentary formula for what it means to pair your food with what you're drinking. Now, San Diego, being the beer centric city that it is, what is the state of beer in San Diego when it comes to food? And we all know that there's room for a lot of growth, but are we making moves? Are we getting to the point where we're very much showcasing what beer can do? Edwin, you go ahead.
I think we still have room to grow. You know, in San Diego, I don't know the numbers as well as you guys do, but I would guess what 25%, 25 to 40%. That's what they would drink is a craft beer, and that's a lot higher than the rest of the country. But that means that there's still 60% that don't know about craft beer, or don't drink it on the regular. And
Yeah.
so we have a lot of room to in that sweet middle spot of being before getting blown up. It's just getting a little bit more mainstream. So there's room to grow, I think.
I think there's definitely room to grow in the beer and food dinner section. I feel like it's kind of a stigma sometimes that people don't, beer is such an approachable price point. It's an affordable luxury. It's about not having it such a event, and that it should be, like you said, an everyday occurrence. Whether you're having, coffee with a certain cereal, cinnamon crunch or something like that, or sometimes just drinking water with something tastes the best.
Yeah, go ahead,
Can I
Edwin.
just say something like it was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. I did a beer dinner with another brewery in San Diego at Republique in Los Angeles, and it was a big deal. Republique, their pastry chef just won a Michelin or a James Beard nomination, and so it's a big deal, right? And so this San Diego brewery did up their very first beer dinner, and so we're there on one half of the restaurant. On the other half, there was another dinner going on, and so during one of the course intermissions, I go over there and see how they're doing. And I talked to one of the cooks over there, and I said, "How much is that beer dinner?" And he goes, "Why? How much is yours?" And I said, I think it was like $65 this beer dinner, right? He goes, "Oh, we're paying $1,200 over here per person."
What?
Right? Of course, it was baller wine. It was a private thing, but that's the disparity that we're looking at. $65, $1,200. That's room to grow.
Oh, that's a lot of room to grow, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy. When we're thinking about, like, Colby, you've done more of these beer dinners than I can even count, brother. But at this point, when you see somebody that has some sort of hesitancy, and you can see it in their eyes, you can see them kind of taking everything like, oh, okay, I paid this for this, and it's beer and stuff like that. What is one of the things that you'd like to highlight for let's say the wine guy that comes in is skeptical about beer and how it works with food and stuff like that? What is one of the things that you hope for that particular person to walk away from, or what you think is where the paradigm shift happens? What do you like to highlight for anyone listening that's like, I don't know about beer, man. I'll do wine all day, but I don't know beer. What do you want to tell those guys?
That there's similar flavors in both of them. They both can mechanically do the same things, fruitiness, acidity. As you break down all the components, I can find beers with the same thing. I often run into people that drink wine. I don't like beer, and if I can get them, like, what kind of wine do you like? Sauvignon Blanc? Yeah. Well, give them a Wahoo. Give them a Belgian wit beer. It's similar kind of, softness, not as acidic, has those fruity notes to it. You like a big oak Chardonnay? Have a Belgian triple. You like big, huge red Zinfandels? Then how about, a double IPA or something like that, So there's always going to be similar flavors in there. And I think, having the art of beer basically come through in those beer dinners and really showcase beers that are not only different and hard to get, but also different in flavors and big and bold in flavors, and those types of beers aren't necessarily. In a lot of ways, it's like a mini beer festival. You go to a beer festival to try a bunch of different beers, so you don't spend a bunch of money out at the store. And I feel like beer dinners are kind of the same way. You go to a beer dinner and you're able to have these incredible vintage beers and special beers and stuff like that. Have it a little bit at a time without having to put too much effort into it, too much monetary.
You know what?
Yeah.
Here's the thing too, Colby. I think we shouldn't disregard this simple fact. We talk about like $85 being a on the higher end of the price point. When you go to let's say George's, just the beer pairing alone is $100, right? Or sorry, the wine pairing alone is $100. It's not like people aren't ready to spend money on the liquid, right? I think we sell ourselves short by saying 85 is too much. I think 85 is such a reasonable price for the quality, for the attention, for the experience. And I think a lot of people miss that part. I can go to a wine dinner and a lot of it is stuffy. Beer dinners, it gets a lot better as the courses come through, right? Because it's a communal thing.
Maybe we're talking about tiers. You know what I mean? Where you do have approachable tier for somebody that doesn't necessarily trust in the beer dinner or, that there is such a thing as beer pairings. But then you have the $85, $125 dinners for people that know exactly what they're going to get. And they've been to one and they see the value behind it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to sell out an $85 dinner sometimes.
It's hard to sell at a $20 dinner sometimes.
Right, that's true.
San Diego is one of the most finicky cities when it comes to buying things because we have so many things to do. I always say the best things in San Diego are free. You have the parks, you have the beach, you have the mountains to go hike in. And so when we come out and
I got my bedroom, I got my backyard, I got my front yard.
You got your sick kegerator, dude. You don't have to leave for years.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what ends up happening is the choices have to beat those. And if they don't beat them, it's just as good to go outside and go to Colby's house, bring him a steak, he'll have the beer, and all of a sudden we're having a good time for the fractions. San Diego is just a tough market.
Right.
No,
right.
I get it. Yeah. Well, it's like I said, I think it's just a tier thing. We've had just as much success with the high dollar dinners as the low dollar dinners, but there's not enough. I just feel like there's not enough people out there versed in beer pairings yet to jump right to the $1,200 beer dinners. I think more locations need to be more approachable on the pairings, just to get people's attitude to change a little bit.
I agree 100%. And one of the things that I like to harp on anytime that I'm hosting a beer dinner or I'm even attending when I'm talking to anybody about it, there's very few moments that an industry can become very intimate with their consumer at an individual level, right? That's why companies are always giving away these sweepstakes. Like you can come and join the CEO and sit in the special booth because people want to feel like they're connected on much more on a higher level than just, hey, I give you my dollar for your product once in a while. They like to know what you're about. And we're reaching that point in San Diego where what we're doing is we're making beer, but a lot of people are making good beer. So we have to take it a step further and we have to talk to our consumers at an individual level so that we can build a relationship with them that way. Because other than that, we're just a cardboard six-pack at your local Vons. But the beer dinners offer themselves to be such a beautiful communal setting, and think of it just as though you were at home and you had somebody there for dinner, where your buddy's coming in and he's eating with your family. That guy or gal leaves knowing a little bit more about your family. They know a little bit more about what you guys are interested in and what you're about. What I don't know what you think, Colby and Edwin, but what I really take away from beer dinners and beer pairings is that it lends itself to be a place of building a rapport with whoever is supplying the environment, right? Whoever the brewery is, whoever the restaurant is and stuff. You come, you sit down, and you get a lot more than just a suggested pairing. In fact, a lot of the times, the ambiance and the whole feel of the whole thing makes a mediocre pairing phenomenal, or a crappy one good. That's my experience. And what I think you're trying to do, Edwin, with what you're doing over there at EDSD, is you're trying to highlight that there is a community aspect that's bigger than the whole thing in a whole, right? It's about being together, and things are just a lot tastier when you're enjoying them with company or virtually, whatever you want to do. Is that fair to say?
There's good food anywhere in the world. You can go down to Mexico and have a great meal for $3, right? But you know what's really special is the experience of it all. Eating with your friends, eating on a night in a city you've never been to, drinking at a beer dinner that's or a beer brunch. Like, some of my fondest memories of Tornado are those beer brunches. You know, I've been to a dozen of them, and there's something special about each one because they're so unexpected, um, and you just open up yourselves to whatever is going to come, and it's 9 o'clock, or sorry, 10 o'clock, and you start drinking, and by
Yeah.
4 o'clock you're done for the day. But it doesn't matter because you know you live that day. And I think what we have to do constantly in these events is twofold. It's the educational a component of it, and it's also the communal and experience of the whole process. Talking, hearing the story, telling the chef, saying why he paired it with this, or the brewer telling the story behind why this beer came about. That's what I want to know at these dinners. And I think because we're so close to all of it, to the breweries, to the food, to the farms, to the fishermen, that we can tell that story in each of these dinners. You sell that story, then what's $150, right? At that point, I got something out of it that gave me a higher appreciation for life.
That's
And
what it is.
that's what it's
Dinner
about.
and a show.
Yes,
Just,
absolutely.
well, dude,
I was
yeah.
waiting for somebody to say stories, because all of our beers at Ballast Point have a story. So
Yeah.
that's part of the dinner, is hearing those stories, hearing how it got named, hearing how it came about, and then, like you said, the chef, whether it was me giving the beer to the chef and kind of talking about it, or what I like is when the chef comes and sits at the bar. It gives me like an hour to just like have little sips and go through things and talk about past pairings and what he's pulling out of it, and let him get inspired right then and there. And that's how we build the menu. That's the fun
Exactly.
stuff.
I think we do a really good job going about beer dinners that way, where we do our homework, and like Colby was alluding to, we sit down with the chef, we talk about the pairings and why they're going to work, so that we're giving you bang for your buck, and you're leaving thinking that it's overpriced. I mean, you're entering thinking that it might be overpriced, and leaving like you would have paid double for it. And so. Yeah, and some of the greatest conversations that we've had were with Chuy Hernandez, who is our sous chef at our Miramar location, and he's going to come on, and we're going to talk about a recipe that he wrote specifically for this episode. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Chuy,
Hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
What's up?
Colby.
Oh,
Hey, good to see you, man. How are you doing?
Great, man. Just like hanging out still.
Hey, listen, Chuy, these recipes are on fire. I'm getting pictures of people cooking it at their house. I'm getting messages of people really loving it, and keep up the good work, man. You should get into it or something. You should do this for a living.
Absolutely, right? I'm gonna
Yeah.
open my own podcast.
Yeah,
Just
dude.
kidding.
Hey, whoa, bro.
hey, don't take his job. Come on.
Yeah, dude. I need to do something around here.
Right.
So, Chuy, today you have written a new recipe, and what can people expect to be cooking up in the near future? What do we got?
Well, the recipe for this episode is we're gonna use short ribs. It's being cold right now. I think it's the perfect time to enjoy a nice quality steak night. So we're gonna use this beer with Victoria Sea, man,
Ooh,
10%.
you mean one of these?
Exactly, one of
One of
those.
those?
Yeah.
Oh, Edwin in the game. Kobe, you have it. Yeah, you're still a little buzzed off Victor. I'm assuming. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and
Yeah.
pour one of these out and go ahead and talk us through the mind of a chef when it comes to this recipe.
You know, I love braising, man. Braising is one of my favorite cooking process because it gives me more time, so you can add a lot of flavors into the braising. So now we're gonna play around with the Victory Soup beer into the braising process, which is amazing. Obviously, we're gonna use New York steak, but everybody at home can use short rib. You wanna use some lamb, you wanna use some any kind of piece of steak you had on hand. You guys can embrace it. Obviously, the quality in the tender is going to be the same, but the flavor of the Victory Sea is going to be there for sure.
Oh, that's amazing, dude. Look, everybody on this chat right here is a savant when it comes to this. We got a professional eater, we got a professional beer pairer, and we got you. So let's talk a little bit through the flavor components of the dish and see how we can make connections and build bridges on Victory at Sea. So we're dealing with meat, and we're dealing with cooked meat. So I mean, Victor at Sea seems seems like an obvious choice, but what are you hoping to get accentuated from this pairing?
Well, you know, this we're gonna use New York steak for braising with the Victory Sea. We like a imperial stout. It's gonna be so rich. The components from the beer, they're amazing. So you got the vanilla flavor, you got the coffee flavor, you got the roasted malt into the beer. So we're just gonna put that into the meat. Obviously, we're gonna add the classic roasted garlic mashed potatoes into it. So it's gonna pair perfectly.
Oh gosh, what do you guys think?
I'm down.
Good thing about Victory at Sea and cooking too is it's not overly bitter. So when you're braising something for long periods of time, that just kind of increases the bitterness. So Victory is perfect for braising meats as well,
Right.
and for having with it too. It's a
Oh yeah,
complimentary.
of course.
Yeah, you're getting this bold beer, but it's really smooth, and you're getting that the vanilla, the aromatics, and you're getting a lot of vanilla on the nose. You're getting roasted notes, really subtle. I think it's going to work wonders. Edwin, what do you got? What do you think?
Well, I've always been a fan of like meat rubbed with coffee, and so meat infused with coffee is gonna really taste good with that just long braise. How long are you braising it for?
We're gonna braise that for around like 2 hours and a half. New
Yeah,
Year's steak is gonna take that time, slow temperature, 250 to 75 degrees the oven. So that's what we plan. We're planning to the meat to be ended at like really really tender at the end. So it's gonna be like literally breaking apart in your
yeah.
hands.
What a good choice.
Yeah,
Do you,
Victory
br-
is such a bold. Go ahead, Kobe.
are you going to brown the meat before you braise it? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
of course. Yeah, we're gonna sear the meat, and also after the meat, we're gonna braise. We're gonna roast the veggies, and then we're gonna deglaze all the flavors from the steak and also from the veggies using the Victory Sea. So we're gonna extract those flavors from the pan, and then obviously we're gonna use some of the best beef base, beef broth. So whatever you have available at home, so we're gonna use that.
Yeah, we were talking about beer being a superior pairing medium, right? When it comes to food, and one of the things, especially with this pairing specifically, is that you're getting a lot of those the sweet caramel notes from the Victory at Sea, the residual sweetness, and then especially if you're browning the meat, you're also getting those chemical reactions, and they almost act as a bridge. And you know, every time that you're pairing a food with a beer, you're always looking out for what bridges exists and what contrasts exists. And one of the things that's funny about beer is that because we cook it, because it's in the kettle, because we get those Maillard reactions, and the same thing is happening when you sear a steak. It's a match made in heaven in that aspect, right?
Same thing that happens when you roast the malt.
Mm-hmm.
You're roasting the sugar, so it's the exact same chemical compounds. That's what creates that bridge, and like you said, makes it very complementary.
It's 60 IBUs. It's good.
60, it's perfect. It's not too bitter, which is it's going to help a lot.
And you're also getting
And
a very low acidity from the coffee that we use, that cold brew. The coffee that we use in that beer is from a local roaster, Cafe Calabria. They've been making the coffee for that beer for how long, Colby?
Since 2005.
And that's a special mix, right? That's a special Victory at Sea blend that they do specifically for us.
Yeah, they call it a full city roast. It's basically a full roast, but keeps the bitterness nice and low. So you can kind of build in that bitterness from the coffee and the hops, you know, together without overwhelming one or the other.
And you
Now-
use an extract?
A coffee extract?
Yeah. Or is it?
I mean,
Is
you
it a
could-
cold
you can-
brew?
It's a cold brew. Yeah.
Yeah.
The cold
Oh,
brew
got
makes
it.
it
Yeah.
super stable.
Yeah.
And because of that, I mean, I always tell people you should at least buy 2 6-packs every year, because you basically drink the first 6-pack and then you put the other 6-pack in the closet or under the house or something like that, because those Victory at Seas will last. I feel like they peak right around 6-7 years is when they're tasting the
Peak.
best.
Wow.
When they
Oh, yeah, you're
peak.
holding on to that for a while.
So that cold brew coffee makes it real stable. The vanilla is actually surprisingly stable in it. And then all that bitterness kind of starts to fall away, and it just becomes super lush and chocolatey, and it just tastes like liquid
It's such
dark
a good
chocolate,
beer, dude.
basically, over some aging and a little bit of year. And that's just warm, cold, whatever. I've done it all kinds of different ways, and it holds up like a champ.
Now, when
sorry, you said something about beer being a better component to, or a pair to wine. Is it because like of all the adjuncts that beer can have versus wine?
I'm always careful about saying better and superior, just because I love wine, and I've done wine versus beer dinners, and there's some of the wine pairings are sometimes better, and that in the heat of the moment there.
Yeah.
I think what really opens up wine or beer instead of wine is the flavor wheel.
Yep.
So wine only hits a few pieces of that pie, of that flavor pie. Whereas I can give you a beer that has some soy characteristics, some umami. I can give you some sour in there, right? Some bitter, just characteristics that aren't normally found in most wines. So I think that's what really excites chefs, in the fact that it kind of opens up the whole flavor palette, and you're not so limited on certain flavors and certain acidity.
Yeah. Also, you got the carbonization of the beer. It's the bitterness. You got carbonization. You got all the sugars from it. It's amazing. It's like being on Disneyland and play around.
no lines, as long as there's no lines, Chuy.
Scrubbing bubbles.
Scrubbing
Exactly.
bubbles. What else do you got on
Scrubbing
this recipe, Chuy? So we're getting the meat component. What else are you throwing on this bad boy that's going to play nicely with our beer?
After the braising, the meat, we're gonna use the same juices from the Victoria Sea and all the beer. We're gonna use that into our gravy. We're gonna make a sauce.
Ooh.
So it's gonna be simple sauce. We're gonna add a little bit of butter and some Dijon mustard onto it, and it's gonna be perfectly simple. And we're just gonna put it on top of the steak. And also we got the mashed potatoes, which is a roasted classic mashed potatoes, something simple. We got some veggies. Obviously, we're gonna add some veggies into the meal, so which is gonna be haricot birds, green beans. So we're just
Okay,
gonna-
that's a perfect steak night. That is That is that's a hearty meal right there, sir. And then you're going to go ahead and accompany it with one of our biggest and boldest beers. And one of the things about Victory at Sea that I've always found astonishing is that it's intimidating on paper, because if you just drink it, if someone were to slip you a pint of Victory at Sea, it goes down so ridiculously easy, and it creeps up on you if you don't really know what you're playing with. I'm sure Colby and has seen his fair share of people drinking it a little too fast, a little too soon. But one of the components that I was very interested about pairing this with the Victory at Sea was how the chocolate and the roasting notes were going to play with the meat. Now, Edwin, I know that one of your favorite spots is Cowboy Star, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
so
Cowboy
you're a man that likes a good steak, a good cut of meat.
I go between whether if it was my last meal, whether I would do sushi, like omakase sushi, or it would be just a perfect steak. It's one or the other, and it really depends on the day.
So when you see a New York this recipe on the menu, and you're looking through the beer list, what do you get excited about? If you had to imagine what Victory at Sea or another imperial porter was going to how it was going to play along with something like this recipe, what are the things that pop out in your brain to go, oh yeah, that's going to work because of X or Y?
Well, okay, first of all, I'm looking at this menu, right, or this recipe, and it's fantastic that I get to have a beer made with, from the brewery right there. So it's going to be a great beer. And what I think I would love about it is some of that gravy he was describing. Put some of that on potatoes, run my vegetables through that gravy. Um, yeah, that sounds perfect right now.
Oh my God, Chuy, look what you're doing to Edwin.
I know, kind of.
So we're suggesting a Victory at Sea. Another thing that was that I thought of was our High West version of Victory at Sea, our barrel aged version of Victory at Sea. Colby, what do you think are some subtle differences that you would expect with this dish, but using the barrel aged version of this beer?
The fresher with that 60 IBUs is always going to cut through the fat a little bit more. Once you get the age and the oxidation, a little bit of sherryness in there, it starts to soften out a lot. So, if you're pairing strength for strength, I mean, they're both going to be big beers. It's just a matter of how much cutting you want to be done by the pairing and how much of the kind of harmonious kind of bridge flavors you kind of want in there a little bit more. But you can go all over the board. You could go tongue buckler. Tongue buckler has that nice caramel, melanoid and Maillard background, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Even calico, even black marlin porter too. Depending on
Hyper down as well.
Yep. Anything that's big and caramel and rich, is very complimentary to anything that's grilled or braised.
So why did you select this beer, Chuy?
Well, actually, we picked this beer because it has a nice. It's really sweet. The caramel flavors, the caramel notes, the roasted malt notes. I think it's gonna be perfectly with the New York steak, and also the gravy. I think the gravy is one of the most important items, like you say before. Combine it with the mashed potatoes, with the veggies on top of the steak is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it plays. For everyone listening who may be thinking about trying this at home, and it also might be the first time that they're really sitting down to listen to their palate. Colby, could you give us a little bit of insight as to somewhat of like a step by step when it comes to tasting beer and then tasting it with the dish? What should people do before they just take a swig of this and then stuff their mouth? How's the setup looking? I just finished cooking this. It's plated. I sit down. I crack open this Victory at Sea. And what's my next move?
Use your senses. Your eye is the first one to taste, right? If something looks horrendous, then the chance of it tasting good has gone down dramatically. And then you use your nose. Basically, your nose is your best tool. Our nose at Ballast Point was our lab for the first 10 years, probably easily. It's amazing what you can smell and what your body kind of reacts to just by the olfactory, both the retro and the ortho. And then it's basically hit that beer first, because you have to hit the beer first, because once you hit that food on your palate, it's going to change. It's going to change your palate. You're going to be adding salt and fat and everything's to it, so that when you hit the beer again, the beer is going to taste different. If there's complementary flavors, bridge flavors in the pairing, then those flavors kind of start to disappear and the back flavors come through in the beer. And it's all about that inhale, exhale, washing that palate off, using those scrub and bubbles, basically, and just making sure that you have to eat. You might as well do as many pairings as you possibly can.
Right.
And I think ultimately the goal is to make the beer taste better with the food and make the food taste better with the beer. So both of them get elevated, equally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Edwin, when you go out to, to do your market research, do you have a special kind of way that works for you when it comes to pairing a dish with whatever you're drinking?
Yeah, so I always look at like three tiers of things, right? So you look for temperature, you look for depth, and you look for texture. So I like my food having different flavors, different temperatures, different textures. Um, and like Colby said, like a lot of it is food is sensual, drinking is sensual because it's about whether it's food, what it looks like, and how it feels in your mouth, and what the temperature of this versus of another component on the plate. So I always look for depth in things, and also like when I'm drinking it with either wine or beer, it's all about how it complements or how it contrasts or how it cuts, right? And so
Right.
there's all these things. It's always in these pairs of threes is how I look at it. And the dishes pairings that stand out the most, and I've been to a few of these like over the years. It's the ones that go unexpected, like Colby was saying, like you drink the beer first or the wine first, and it has something completely different after you drink it for the second sip or third sip, and as it warms, as the beer warms, it has a different function as well on the
Right.
palate.
Chuy, since you started your culinary career and now you're working for a brewery with an awesome restaurant and and a chef like you, what are you trying to kind of heighten when you're thinking about creating a dish like this that is going to be paired with a beer like Victory at Sea? What do you want fans to get out of it from your brain?
Okay, first of all, like I work a lot with wines, so I think like it's really easy work with wines. Not easy, but it's really good. Working with beer, it was like something new for me on my career. But after a couple of months, I see the difference. Work with wines and on beer. We got so many other choices to work with beers. It's like you can use your creativity just using the flavors. We already have a excellent beer. The beer, Ballast Point beer is amazing. We got 60 different flavors, so we can play around. It's so the number one concern, the number one my number one goal is like the experience to the customers. If they had a great experience tasting the beer, because we already have a good beer. So we're just gonna put some really good food on the table, and we're gonna combine those flavors into the beer, and it's gonna be the experience. So if they have that experience, that's what I'm looking for. I wanted to come back to us for another beer dinner just to eat on the regular basics, and that's what I'm looking for.
I love it. You're a modern day poet, my friend. Hey, listen, Chuy, thank you so much. I can't wait for feedback on this recipe. It looks delicious. You did a really good job. Keep it up. And for anyone listening, be sure
Hey,
that
I got a
you
challenge. I got
oh
a challenge for
Good.
Chewy.
here goes.
Let's do it.
It's going down.
Victory at Sea Biramisu.
Beer misu.
Ooh, can you even handle that? Go,
Yes.
Chuy. Accept it. Accept it right now
So
on
you
the
got
show.
the
Accept the
finger
Let's do
challenge.
it.
cookies. Use the beer instead.
Let's do it.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
That sounds
Yeah.
really good.
Oh my God,
Excited.
you guys can't be together. You guys can't be together. You guys are breaking.
That's another
food.
show.
You guys
That's
are
another show.
breaking
Yeah.
food. Hey, listen. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up with a traditional and mandatory. Yeah, dog. Do you guys have some beer to shoot?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
Edwin, you're doing it right. You're doing it right.
Oh no, I got.
Oh, all right. Abe, and before we take this, you guys, listen, Edwin, thank you so much, brother. Thank you so
Totally.
much for being on the show. What you're doing is amazing, and it really speaks to I think the philosophy that we should all have right now in these crazy times that we're living in right now. What you've built and what you're helping create in San Diego is I don't think it's cool. I think it's necessary. I think it's cool and necessary. So keep up the good work. And can you tell everybody where to find you, how to follow you, and anything that you want to kind of plug?
Sure. So the main thing is Eating and Drinking in San Diego. It is a Facebook group. There's 15,800 members, like we talked about. And just if you want to be in there, it's a closed group. So just say you saw this video, heard this podcast, and I'll fast track you in because there's like 2,500 people wanting to get into this thing. The other things that I do are the Liquid City. We throw events. It's unfortunate this COVID thing happened because we really wanted to do the cheese event with Ballast Point. You guys were one of the first people we approached.
Yeah.
The other final thing is I really want to take over Yelp, right? And so I'm doing this app called the Great Food Project. And what the Great Food Project is, it's reviews. We're getting rid of reviews, so it's recommendations, not reviews.
I
And
like
so the
it.
idea behind it is recommendations are very positive thinking, right? I recommend a good restaurant to you. I recommend a bad restaurant to you. So you start from a good place. Where reviews, a lot of times they're so you usually do two things in a review: because you really like it or because you really hate it,
Yeah.
and there's nothing in between. And so when everything is a 1 or a 5, guess what? It doesn't tell you anything about a restaurant, and it's unfair to guys like Chuy that people just don't go and recommend a place, recommend a dish, right? So that's my next project. I'm hoping to launch that by the middle of this year. And it's a project that I think is going to take off because when it's mutually beneficial to restaurants, to diners, and to people in the industry, I think it's going to help change the paradigm of how food is discovered.
Right.
online.
And when there's a guy behind it like yourself, you're such a rad dude. You're so passionate about it, and you can just hear it. You're contagious, man. So it will be something really beneficial to the community, and it will take off, dude. I assure you. Colby, thank you, the Hop Father. Thanks for coming on, man. You are a plethora of knowledge. Chuy,
Cheers.
killing it
Thank
again.
all you
Let's
guys
do this.
for coming on.
Yeah. Hey, wait, hold on. What is that? Colby?
I'm not. I'm just come on. Come
Oh, okay,
on.
all right. Cheers.
I'm
Salud,
ready.
caballero.
Yeah.
Yeah, dog. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning into the show. We could have gone on for hours. Big shout out to Edwin Real from Eating and Drinking in San Diego. We appreciate all that you're doing for our city. Big shout out to Colby, the OG Chandler. You're a lot of fun. And thanks to everybody listening. So we'll see you next time. Cheers, you guys. Be safe.